So how much time do you really need to spend on studies? 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours? Honestly, spend as much time as you need to. I tend to find after 30 minutes, I can get 90% of the information I need to make it a readable image. So I did 4 30-minute studies to see what I could come up with within that time. And without further ado, here we go. Here are my studies that I did. Okay, I recorded my paintings and I time-lapsed them, and I want to go through them and just talk about them as I let the time-lapse play. Okay, my 30-minute studies, let's watch them. Okay, so when I start this out, I'm not doing a drawing, I'm just painting it. I'm blocking kind of the bigger shapes and colors first. I think a mistake here I made was adding in the white without really defining where the water and the rocks meet. So they kind of weren't as accurate as the image was, which is okay because there's nothing like super important about that. But it would make it go a lot better. And then after you kind of group out your darks and lights, you can kind of go in and add more darks and lights within that shape. Then you slowly add in more color within it. Slowly add more color within it. I didn't have the opacity turned to 100% all the time, and that kind of let it kind of layer on top of the other colors, so you could see through it a little bit. Starting to add orange, more water, and using just the round brush with a tapered stroke. The pressure size, so when you press down on it, there's more pressure. And there's a lot to extract from this particular drawing or study. And I think I got a pretty decent study. I got the colors pretty good. I got the values decently. A few of the rocks are needing a bit more attention, especially those ones on the left. I probably could have used from zooming in on it, but that was just how it comes out. Probably could have used with zooming in on it. And you just kind of paint over things and try and make things look better. How do I decide on where do I work on stuff? I usually just kind of jump around wherever I think needs the most work, or I'm excited to work on, or is lacking and it's not as cohesive with the rest of it, or if it just looks kind of bad, sometimes you got to work on that. And sometimes you just work left to right or right to left. You just work your way through it kind of systematically. But usually I'm kind of jumping around all over the place and being like, oh, this thing, I noticed this thing, let me go fix it. But overall, with painting water, I think using opacity, lowering the opacity a little bit, helps make it look really good. Okay, we're moving on to the second one, which is a mountain, and I'm actually using line drawing here to kind of block in where the lines or the different values and shapes within it. And I think that helps kind of get the proportions a little better, because it's easier to move a line over instead of just sculpt it with the paint, kind of push it back with the paint, which I do that when I get to the color. And then I move on to the color, blocking in roughly what I thought the colors were, and then refining them later. Very similar process to what I did before. And you got to keep in mind the different colors and the values, and sometimes you just squint at it and it helps you see where the darks and lights are. The lightest part of this, honestly, is where the sun is hitting the snow. It's kind of yellowish, orangish looking. And that's the brightest area, and I would say the darkest area on here is probably the trees in the, not kind of in the mid-ground. The trees and the shrubs in the mid-ground. They seem to be the darkest point. And then you just go back in looking for areas where they could be like, okay, something doesn't look quite right here, work on it a little bit more. And there's a lot to do in landscape studies. There's so many details. You gotta make a decisions on what to leave out, because if you're gonna try and make it look exactly like it, why even paint it? Because you're just gonna be trying to like basically be a printer for a photo and just replicating it, when you need to simplify and try and understand it instead of just trying to copy it exactly. That is something important to keep in mind when doing studies. And you get the sense of that when you do faster ones, like these 30-minute ones. I do look at these, I'm like, okay, I could do more in this area, like the rocks and kind of the center part of it. Okay, moving on to my third study. This was a couple days after my first two. And I did a line drawing, which I think it's okay with forest, but it can be a waste of time because there's just so many vertical lines that you have to redraw and get them just right, and drawing the thicknesses of the trees as well. So I could see just painting this from scratch being easier in some ways. Like I say, drawing a forest is a mess, even though I don't know how I wrote that, but it's real bad grammar. Drawing is a forest mess. And I just try and block in the light parts of these. I find when I work from light to dark in forest, it just makes more sense to me, because usually the lights are behind the trees and they're coming through where the light is coming from, at least in this example. And then I roughly paint in the trees in their darker color. Eventually I will just drop the line layer and get rid of it. And another thing about forest, they're hard because you gotta like make decisions on how much you want to leave out and how much you want to leave in, and how accurate you want to get to the trees. And I wasn't super accurate. I just kind of placed them similar to the study or the reference. And I think that's the hardest part about painting forest, because you want to try and get it to look similar, but trees are all different anyway, so if they look a little different in your study, it's not that big of a deal. And I just basically work on the same process that I've been doing. Hopefully I'm sharing some different insights and information and doing studies through each of them, because there's different challenges for different environments. I use more textured brush here because I think that really gives more of the leaves kind of more of a movement to them. And you can get a little bit more color variation when you use some slightly textured brushes. Something else I did, I used more layers for these. I kind of painted behind it so I wouldn't have to paint over the trees as much. And that was my third study, and now let's move on to my fourth study. This photo is actually one that I took myself, and I really like it. I like the lighting in here. It looked a lot prettier when I was in person, which is sometimes a problem with photo reference, but it's just when you have time to get it. This one was a bit of a challenge for me. Again, the tree is not nearly close to what the real thing looks like. It looks similar, but it's just different. It's really hard to like get the proportions of like, okay, this branch is kind of this way, this distance away from it, and it can be a challenge to replicate it exactly. But I do start with a line drawing because I think that will help me guide my actual painting. I'm going to get into that now. Oh yeah, and I also just used the round brush for this because I wanted to see how I could get color or paint foliage with the round brush, because I usually rely on the texture brushes. And what I mostly did here was just use the tapered pressure size brush and just drew over it in different opacities and different sizes and changed the color as much as I could. And that seemed to work. I've just been fascinated by the round brush lately. What I could have done, I think foliage would lend itself to maybe a softer brush, but there are some hard edges in the tree. But this one just has more of a, I don't know, I like how it looks. I like the style of it. It's very simple. And I think if you can use the round brush to do your studies with, you basically can paint or draw anything with it. And it's in basically every program. So might as well use it. Might as well get comfortable with it. So if you do end up switching programs, which I'm thinking about because Photoshop drives me nuts, I would maybe just go to something else. I would probably gravitate towards a round brush because I've been practicing with it. And there you have it. 30-minute studies. They're quite useful. I would say they're not the only, you shouldn't only do 30-minute studies, but their benefits are you get through them quickly, you can reflect on them more, you can get feedback on them a lot quicker by just looking at them. They aren't as much of a time commitment, and you still learn something out of it. Some cons to it is the studies won't always look as good, and that can maybe hurt your confidence a little bit. Sometimes they'll look great because they just come together, and you don't learn as much about your subject. So maybe I'll do 1 hour studies, and we'll see if those are good. And just remember, doing studies they can be hard, they can be fun, probably a little bit of both. They can be frustrating. And you should just do more of them, no matter how much time you spend on them. Just do more studies. And until next time, Dartagon out.